Hello, we're here with Dr. Barber from the University of Calgary, and he can tell us a little bit more about himself and where we are.
All right. Hi. We are at the Avatamsaka Monastery here in Calgary. It's the largest temple monastery complex in the city. And we're going to have a short tour of the temple area. As Father Jun has noted, I'm a professor at the university, and then I also teach meditation at the Calgary Buddhist Meditation Center.
And Dr. Barber, if you can tell us about this statue behind you. What is this?
Yes, this is a statue of, in Sanskrit her name is Avalokiteshvara, or in Chinese they call her Guan Yin, and it's a Bodhisattva of compassion. Bodhisattvas are people working on becoming Buddhas.
Okay. Now, as we go into the sort of the main body of the temple, if I'm correct, there's something that we're going to see on our left side. If you can show us what that is.
Yeah, this is the Buddhist canon here. Of course, this would be the Chinese language version of it. And there's literally thousands of texts. It includes the teachings of the Buddha and the rules for the monks and nuns, and of course the philosophy that develops out of all of that.
Wonderful. As we go kind of deeper into the temple here, or into the main area, if you can describe maybe in just a few sentences, what is Buddhism?
Yeah, Buddhism is what the Buddha Shakyamuni taught about 2,500 years ago, and a lot of the doctrine and practices that developed out of that.
Wonderful.
Right. So this is the Avatamsaka Monastery, and Avatamsaka is the name of one of the important Buddhist texts. And in that text, there's many, many teachings because it's very large. But in that text, one of the teachings is that there are many realms and many spheres, and those realms and spheres will have their own people and will have their own Buddha. So if you look around on the walls, there's more than 1,000 Buddhas here representing all those different places in the universe.
That's beautiful. Now, as we're here, and this is very, very amazing, but if you can tell us, there are some religious vestments that are put on for different religious ceremonies here and then elsewhere in the temple.
Yeah. Buddhist vestments differ from which culture that we're talking about and which school inside Buddhism that we're talking about. So you'll see quite a bit of difference if you're, say, in Thailand, where the robes are pretty much like an Indian style. They just wrap around themselves and tend to be, kind of a yellow color. Where in Japan they tend to be black, and in Tibet they tend to be kind of a wine color, and of course the Chinese tend to use a kind of a yellow color, but it's not. The cut of the robe is very different from the robe they use in Thailand. Okay. Right? And that's for the monks and nuns. Lay people can also wear robes, and then that again depends on which school and which country the robes are originally from.
As we maybe go right in front of the main statue here, if that's all right, if you can tell us about the practice of prayer or meditation in this temple.
Yeah. This is the main Buddha spoken about in the Avatamsaka Sutra, and his name is Vairochana, which means the illuminator. And he wasn't a historical Buddha. He's like a meditation Buddha. And the gesture he's doing is the gesture for teaching.
So how does somebody become a teacher in Buddhism?
This again depends on which school we're talking about. But usually it's some sort of training period that it would include study and practices. But exactly which practice and which books are studied, changes. So the Zen school has, its kind of routine, and the Tibetan schools have their routines.
Okay. Maybe if you can show us a different part, if we can maybe walk over here, if that's all right.
So here you have the main Buddha in the center, but you have two bodhisattvas on the right and left. This one that's sitting on the elephant's a good luck symbol, by the way, in Asia, is called Samantabhadra, and he represents practice. You know? And then this one over here on the lion, his name is Manjushri, and he represents wisdom. So practice and wisdom.
Practice and wisdom. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Is a Buddhist temple the same as other Buddhist buildings of worship?
Yeah. There's a number of different Buddhist buildings. You have shrines, you have monuments, you have, of course, temples, monasteries, and so on. So there's actually a quite large variety, although not so much here in Calgary, right? But if you go to Asia, you can find pagodas and stupas and all sorts of things.
Wonderful. Maybe if we can move towards this statue in the corner, you can maybe tell us a little bit about that one and maybe answer this question as we go. Do Buddhists worship God?
This is something that's often misunderstood by people, and they believe that Buddhism is atheist. It's not really. The gods are spoken about in many of the Buddhist texts. They're just not important for nirvana, right? So when you say God, most people are going to think about the Judeo-Christian God. Of course, he's not mentioned in any of the texts, but a creator God in the Indian style, Brahma, is mentioned. And most of the gods that are mentioned are very similar to the Greek Roman gods that we know. Mm-hmm. Right? So Jupiter and Apollo, the sun god, in India, that would be Indra and Surya. Right, that's their names, but it's basically the same gods. Okay. Right? So they're mentioned in all the books, so it's not like they don't believe in gods, but it's just that the gods aren't particularly important for nirvana.
Okay, interesting. So what is this statue a depiction of here?
Well, this is a memorial shrine, and this bodhisattva's name is Siddhigarba. And his teaching says that by his vow is to empty the hells of all people suffering. Okay. And so he takes on a great deal of significance, particularly for families who have someone recently passed. Recently passed,
okay. Name 3 cool modern-day Buddhists.
Okay. K.D. Lang, Orlando Bloom, and maybe the most famous Steve Jobs.
Oh yes, okay. Can you sing a few bars of one of your favorite religious songs or recite a favorite text?
Yeah, well, I think I'll spare you my singing voice, but I'll chant something. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. And basically I take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and the Sangha.
That's the beautiful thing about chant. It's the in-between between singing and speaking.
We can save face, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Do you have a sacred book that you use or study in Buddhism?
Quite a few, actually. I have a whole sort of a list of 12 different texts that I try to get through once every 2 years. And I just keep rereading them because I keep finding new meaning inside of them. But out of that group, I would say for sure the most important is what's called the Heart Sutra, which is the heart of wisdom. That's basically what it means.
Okay. As we maybe move towards the back here, if that's okay, what's the last book that you've read having to do with Buddhism?
Yeah.
Dr. Barber.
I just finished reading a text. It's called the Angulimala Sutra. Angulimala was a murderer, and it's his story on how he became a disciple and how he progressed through the teachings.
Now this is interesting to me. How, I mean, is this a common theme in Buddhism of people that have sort of been known as kind of like doing really bad things and then turning around their life to kind of follow morality and truth?
I don't know if it's common, but there's enough of them.
Yeah.
You know, and the Buddha was very open-minded, and so some of his disciples have been prostitutes and murderer, as I said, and just, you know, soldiers and so on. Even the first Buddhist emperor, his name was Ashoka. Right? So he was the emperor of everything that we know of India. I mean, it was a massive amount of land, except for one little place that had resisted for 10 years. And since he was busy fighting elsewhere, he couldn't turn his attention. When he got everything else quieted down, he turned his attention to hundreds of thousands of people marched there. And there was more than 100,000 men killed in one battle. Right? He walked through that, you know, and this is like with swords and stuff, so, you know, people are screaming and yelling as they're bleeding out, and, you know, it's really terrible. And he walked through that, and it was so much. That's why he became a Buddhist. He said, that's it, no more violence.
Oh. Now there's a beautiful statue, I think, of the founder of this temple. If you can show us about that and maybe tell us a little bit about that as we kind of conclude. And maybe on our way, if you can tell us, Tony, how many Buddhists live in Calgary?
Well, yeah, this is always a difficult thing because most Buddhists are also Confucianists and Taoists, or at least in the Chinese tradition. In the Japanese tradition, they'd be Buddhists and Shintoists. And so exactly the numbers are hard to say, but it's probably somewhere around the 1% mark.
Okay.
So this is Master Zhuang. He came from China and settled in San Francisco and opened up the first monastery there. And then from there it grew, and now we have this branch of Chinese Buddhism has temples all over the world. Right? So
wonderful. Now the temple is, I think, closed now because of COVID, but later on, it's usually open every day, right?
Yeah, it's people can come. Usually on the weekend they have kind of public activities. But, there's a monastery here, or a nunnery actually, here, and usually there's a whole population, but a lot of them are at one of the other temples now over in Golden. So they're on kind of a minimal staff because of COVID.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Barber, for everything here and for giving us a little tour. Maybe one final question here. We've had this fountain in the background, which I'm sure is going to show up in our video. Is there any rationale for why a fountain would be in a temple?
The flowing water is good luck, and it's quite common in Asia, you know, for temples to have beautiful gardens. Right? So if you think of the wonderful rock gardens in Japan and that type of thing, even though we're in an urban setting, but at least we can have a little bit of nature.
A little bit of peace, right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Tony. I really appreciate it.
All right.